Hey VC, Dave in Texas here. Welcome to the new subscribers. Appreciate you subscribing, and want to thank Carm for name dropping me so that I'd get some new subscribers. Things got cold in Texas here recently. It actually started on Monday, and what's weird about Texas is it can be warm when you wake up and then turn really cold, or the weather will change, and you just never know what will happen, which is exactly what happened on Monday. So as you can see, I'll show you the outside. We got snow out through here, and I live in kind of a forested area, but so I've been kind of staying inside and enjoying it from the inside. But I saw today when I got on my computer that one of the main members, or one of the main members, Christian Bouchard from Embryo, had recently passed, and I've enjoyed his music throughout the years. He started Embryo as kind of a krautrock band, more or less, and they do kind of jazz. When they started out, it was more rock oriented, but then through the years, they started just being kind of headed towards jazz, but still kept the rock tendencies to a degree. Really don't know who I'd compare them to, other than just a lot of the krautrock German bands that are more jazzy. That was a live set in Barcelona, which is pretty good. This is a live set from Embryo that was recorded in Hamburg in 1974. It's a 2-record set, and of course with these, this is a picture of him right here, with these live recordings. They're all pretty jammy. But they're all pretty good too. Eventually they kind of started getting more into like world music, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like here's one they did called Knee High, I guess is how you say it. Kind of Asian oriented, a little bit influenced. This is a picture of Chris on the back playing marimba. He was a multi-instrumentalist and could play keyboards, percussion, drums, vibes, as it's shown here, and was just an all-around good musician. Here's one called, I'm not going to try and pronounce it, Ibn Battuta, which has a little bit more of a Indian vibe to it. And all of these still, and like he also uses musicians from each of these other countries, also kind of jam with them, play with them. This is a picture. They had a really large, as you can see here, large ensemble. Now this probably includes some of the other musicians that he jammed with, but they always did have sort of a large ensemble, or in the band anyway. This came with a little booklet inside of it. But yeah, if you're looking for something different, these would certainly qualify. This is on the Schneeball, I guess is how you say it, right here, label, which I'm guessing is a German label. of these, this is maybe the first one I picked up, Calypso, which kind of has a little bit more of a oh golly, Calypso island feel to it. There's a little bit of vocalization on here. Also, Christian Richard plays organ, electric vibes, marimbas, and so forth on here. This was, of the ones I've shown, well, except for the live ones, this one was a little bit easier to get into, particularly if you don't really listen to adventurous music. This might be a good one. Of course, you can always go to YouTube or some of the streaming sites and listen to some of this, Spotify, something like that. But yeah, sorry about his passing. Also here lately, been listening to this CD by Paul Motion called Selected Recordings, and it was remastered. It's on ECM, on an ECM label, but also known, I don't know if it's a division or subdivision, called Rarium. But like it says there, it's just selected recordings from Paul Bley from his various albums. And it came with like a little booklet kind of talking about it. I saw Daryl Higgins talking about Paul Motion's, I think one of his earlier albums was called Conception Vessel, I think is what it was. And I didn't have that, and I didn't have anything by Paul Motion. This is a little booklet that came inside this CD. And he plays with a lot of different ECM artists. This is a picture of him with, not going to be able to read that, but that's a picture of him right there in the cap. But there's one with Paul Bley and the bass player. Here's Paul Bley right here. But I didn't have anything by Paul Motion, so I had to kind of pick this up to kind of get an overview of what he might sound like, and it's a real good album. And I'd also say, like, if you haven't experienced many of the musicians on the ECM label, that this is a real good way to kind of see what that label's all about, and B, just to get an overview of what some of these musicians might sound like. And I really like this. Also too, like if you're, you know, hesitant or a little bit sheepish about listening to say avant-garde music or kind of like free jazz. Now this isn't all free jazz, but ECM was one of the labels that I started listening to where I kind of would get my feet wet, and they kind of, not all the cuts, but I mean one or two of their cuts, like particularly on this album, the second cut kind of goes into that territory, and it's not a real you know, hectic or session that you just can't listen to it. It's easy enough for you to get into. But anyway, it was some of these ECM artists like this that I think I really kind of got my feet wet on listening to some free jazz, and kind of got me into that whole genre of free jazz, and it's a real good label. Here with all the snow on the ground, I've been kind of listening to more impressionistic, kind of dark, wintry stuff. This is one of them. I listen to, this is Brian Eno's Discreet Music, one of his early solo efforts. And it's really good. It's a little bit more classical in nature, but it is really good. It's kind of stark and cold and impressionistic, which is not to say that you can't get into it. You definitely can. I was also listening to AQ Radio, which is a radio station I listen to a lot on the web. You can do a Google search on that. I haven't quite learned how to leave links under my videos yet, but AQ Radio, if you go over there, it's accuradio.com. They have many genres that you can listen to, like rock or jazz or whatever, classical. And they have a classical genre. Under the classical genre, they'll have various, ensemble or orchestral. There's an avant-garde classical label there, and they've been playing some Eno, which I agree he is his stuff can be avant-garde. It can be, I would consider it kind of modern classical as well. This is a very again kind of avant-garde album. It's got 4 musicians on it. All 4 of them are guitarists. It has Fred Frith, Derek Bailey, Hans Reichel, I believe is how it's said, and G.F. Fitzgerald. This came out some time ago, back in the 80s, towards the 80s somewhere. But all 4 of the guitarists on this album, I think that's Frith right here. All 4 of these guitarists are pretty much in the avant-garde. Some are more jazzy inclined, but no, wait a minute. This is Frith right here, right there. And like they'll do things like, I think one of the earlier pioneers of all this, who's on this album, is this Derek Bailey. And they'll attach things to their guitars and run things through the strings and what have you, and do loops and stuff, or use pedals and loops and all kind of things to create different sounds for their guitars. And as you know, Frith also played in Henry Cow, and he's been doing a lot of solo album work too, and he also has done. There's a DVD or a video called Across the Border, which he plays on. And if you haven't seen that DVD, give it a look. It's a pretty interesting documentary. And Frith also played, I was going to look this up before I did this, and I didn't. He also played the music for the soundtrack. Golly, I can't even think of the artist, but he's an earth artist. He creates his art out of leaves from trees and blocks of ice and all that kind of thing. That was a real interesting DVD as well. If I can remember it, I'll leave it down in the comments, or I'll look it up and put it in the comments. But that was a pretty incredible video to watch as well. Here's one that's pretty wintry, and I know a lot of the people in the VC know of Tomita. He was a synthesizer player, and it's put out many different albums. This is my favorite one by him, but I mean, he's got a lot of them that I really enjoy. But I mean, for the weather that we've been having, this is perfect for snowy days. This is another ECM artist, and it's an album that I haven't seen mentioned. This is Jan Garbarek, and he plays on here with, Ralph Towner plays on here with him. This is a very icy album. Jan Garbarek plays the tenor and soprano sax and wood flute on here, and Ralph Towner plays 12-string and classical guitars, wind harp, and then there's some brass on here as well. But This is a very moody album, actually, and I don't really recommend this to, as your first ECM purchase, because it might turn you off. This is almost kind of more into a drum territory, almost, and less jazz. It's very moody, and it's very evocative of of a Norse landscape or a wintry landscape. And like the cover here, it's very much like that. It's kind of bleak. So it's not a ECM album I pull out and listen to often, but in like the winter, it kind of goes well in winter. But and the album name is DIS, D-I-S. Here's one I played recently. It's by Kitaro, and this is maybe one of my favorite Kitaro albums. He's sort of a new age artist and a synthesis as well, sort of in some ways like Tomita, but different too. A lot of his stuff kind of does contain like Asian themes, and this one's called India, and it's on Geffen Records. But a lot of his music is light, or kind of symphonic, I guess you would say. And but it's a good album, one of his. I listen to it like during the winters for some reason. Excuse me. Here's another one that I kind of feel like it's like a winter's album. This is Stomatu Yamashita. This is Go. I believe this is Go 2, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe it is. Maybe it's just the first one. But it's got Steve Winwood on it, and Michael Shreves is the percussionist from. He used to play in Santana. And there are some vocals on here, but there's more instrumentals, and it's all it's electronic, although there's some percussion with Michael Shreves being on here. But I mean, parts of it are kind of wintry sounding, and so I was listening to this here recently, and it's also kind of spacey, like the cover might indicate, but it kind of is a mood piece, I guess you could say, but it's, like I said, it's electronic with some vocals and percussion in it. But it's a good album, I like it. So there you go, VC. This is Dave enjoying my winters down here in Texas. I hope everybody's staying warm. And like I said, I appreciate the new subscribers, and I'll talk to you later.